Alright, so this video I want to shed some light and some clarity on a rather important and impactful dynamic that shows up in our modern culture, and it's something that's really drilled into our heads from a really young age. And this is really the idealization, the obsession with being a martyr, being the martyr. And really, if we wanted to simply sum it up, we could basically say that the pinnacle expression or production of modern culture would be the martyr. And this is the thing that for some reason we are all unconsciously pushed into. And if we look at basically the underpinnings for monotheistic religions, whether they be Christianity or other things that are based around, a person who gave himself for us. Basically, this sets up a real deep imprint to how we really interface with the world, how we relate in relationships, how we relate to ourselves, and how we think the world ought to function. Because really, if we look at what is a cosmology, what is a paradigm really, it's basically our story or our symbolic representation of how we think the world works. So we originally sort of had feudalistic rulers, which are basically kings and queens and this whole court kind of thing. And then basically we had that which then was sort of shaped to Christianity, which is setting up the cosmos as being this kind of court. And then we even within the legal system, it is shaped in the same way, wherein there's the judge and he's on top, and basically he has the best position where he can see everyone. No one's behind him, only the walls behind him, and he has guards at his sides, and he's up above everyone else, and there's usually barriers. And this is basically how an ancient court would be set up as well, with a king or an emperor. Basically because they're the most powerful, so they're always looking out for threats. And this is basically how we think the world, the cosmos is. And then the highest representation of this, the highest thing a person can do is, sacrifice themselves for the court, sacrifice themselves for the king, give themselves up for the country. And this is, in essence, patriotism. And this is really the propaganda that we've all been hit with. At least if you grow up in America, you go to a public school, every morning you have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So you, as a person, have to pledge your allegiance to the flag of the whatever country. And other countries have their own rituals, I'm sure. But in America, every single day you're doing the thing that you do when you take an oath or a pledge. You put your hand over your heart, you look at something, and in unison you say this thing. And Americans think this is somehow normal, but then they look at these kinds of gestures from other cultures and think, whoa, that's crazy, that's insane, they're out of their mind, what's wrong with them? But here we are every day doing this. And it seems a bit odd. And then the same thing from religion. Jesus died for our sins, Muhammad, these other figures from different traditions, which I don't really know a lot about off the top of my head because I don't care really anymore. I just know about Christianity to a larger degree because it's the culture in which I grew up in, and I've spent a lot of time to really not remember it and try to forget it. So we believe this world is structured in this way, which is basically mirroring an ancient court system. And if we were to just look at history and take it back and see where these religions came from and how interwoven, if not somewhat identical, they are to these feudalistic models, these hierarchical models of the world, that were not only models, but were just literally how the world was set up for most of the time. Because most of what has been ruling humanity for most of human history to an extreme large degree has been heaven's up here, God's up here, and then right one step below that there's the ruler, whether that's the king or the emperor or the chosen one, and then below that there's this whole hierarchy, this whole patterning. Maybe you think that's actually true. Maybe you think that that whole model, it works. But we should probably, at least at the bare minimum, be aware that, number one, that's just our interpretation of the world. That's just our symbolic representation. It's just our idea, which exists only here. It's not really out here. This is kind of the shocking thing about our imagination, is that we can be up here and close our eyes and spin all of these webs and make up all of these stories about people and what we think they should do and do for us and who we are and all these complexities, but no one is there with us really. There's no real verification for those patterns, for those dynamics, for those objectives, for those things that we are doing. So it's an important thing to understand. Likewise, it's also important to understand if we're really setting up the world in this way, then by definition, by default, we are unconsciously going to believe the martyr is like the highest thing you can do. So martyr being sacrificing yourself, giving yourself for this thing. And then to take Jesus, for example, as an archetype of this pattern, basically everyone's like, oh, he did all these things for us, he gave himself for us, he's our savior. But really, when we look at that, we have to realize that the actual situation is that no one gives a fuck about this other person. Like, all they really care about is their own selfish desires, their own aims, their own agenda, their own objective, their own resolution of pain or avoidance of pain, or their own imaginary scenario of supreme something or another. So they're basically just using this person like a dildo. They don't really give a fuck about this person. And we can see many, many historical figures who have played similar roles and sacrificed themselves. Usually they're surrounded by a bunch of selfish, self-centered, absorbed, insecure people that don't give a flying fuck about them, don't even really hear what they're saying, don't even really get what they're saying, are not even practicing, aren't even really approaching it at all in a mature way. They're just sort of trying to fulfill some parental role that was never there, or try to just project all of their inner energy onto this other person, which psychically and energetically is not very clean. It's actually somewhat parasitic. It's somewhat vampirical, because that's how parasites work. And viruses work, is they basically feed on a host for their number one agenda, which is reproduction and spreading. Well, we look at cults, we look at religions, we look at large movements in general. Basically, that's what's happening. There's this large interchange of psychic energy with this person at the top, and the number one agenda of that thing that's in everyone is basically the spread and the reproduction. Because it's rare when someone actually engages within the actual principles that underlie a teaching, the actual principles that underlie a system. Because this is how some people might interpret what I was saying, is, oh, well, Jesus did all these things, or this savior did all these things, or this guru, or this teacher, or this cult leader did all these things for all these other people, and then all the other people care about is their own selfishness. So then people will say, oh, well, they just need to try harder, they just need to work harder, or they just need to, meditate more, or fast, or cleanse more, or repent for their sins, or it just goes to show how evil they really are, or some shit like that, which is basically, again, not understanding the principles, not understanding the dynamic. Because what might actually be understanding is not to just, on a generically way, say like, oh, well, they're just evil and they're just stupid and blah, blah, blah. But to really say, well, what do these things imply? If the situation is set up that we're supposed to do all of these things that we can never do, that is not really possible and is based upon a lot of things that just aren't real and have no substance or basis to them, then what is that really implying, and what is that really teaching? And that's also the point of just getting deeper and actually saying, well, what are the actual principles? What are the actual dynamics? What is the actual living thing that's underneath this? And usually with many teachings, it's more of like kind of a joke. It's more of an awareness sort of thing. It's to get us in touch with a thing, to get us in touch with our actual condition, our actual situation as it is, rather than blindly following some external thing, which in the term of context of religion, people are talking all about, love and compassion and being nice and being kind and all these things. But it's not compassionate, it's not loving, it's not kind, it's not nice to try to be all of those things when you're actually not. Like if you actually feel hurt, you feel anger, you feel some other legitimate thing that is your real state, to try to put on a different face or to dress that up in different clothing, that's actually manipulative and somewhat violent and repressive to yourself, deceitful to yourself, but also deceitful to other people. So perhaps how to actually be loving or compassionate or kind or nice or understanding is to see what your situation actually is, and handle it in a way that's not destructive, or at least minimally destructive, minimally harmful for you and for everyone else. And having the wherewithal and the cognizance to say, oh, well, this is my thing, this is my experience inside of me, and I don't really have to try to put it on someone else or use someone else for some aim. Like that would actually be kind, that would actually be compassionate. And maybe that is requiring us to look at things that are negative or to not be nice. Because if we've been trying to be nice, meaning we've been trying to be this martyr thing our whole lives, or for a large chunk of our lives, maybe there's people around us that maybe we don't really like them. Maybe our boundaries are not good. Maybe we're unhappy with our relationships. Maybe we don't like our job. Maybe our lifestyle, our dietary habits, our sleep patterns are dysfunctional. Maybe we're addicted to alcohol or marijuana or psychedelics or sugar or something. Maybe we're addicted to TV and TV shows. And if we're just trying to be all like placing things on top over that, it's not really going to get us anywhere. So it might take, the nicest thing we might be able to do is to be a dick and be like, holy shit, I'm just doing all this ridiculousness to myself, harming myself. That's not cool. Or we can say, is that cool? Do I really like it? Do I like being a doormat in these relationships? Do I like not speaking up? Do I like not voicing my feelings or my thoughts or my opinions? Do I enjoy feeling oversensitive and overwhelmed by the world and things within it? This is the thing, is it's not really you should or you must or you mustn't. It's sort of getting in touch with what actually is. Because the reality is that if someone's been nice to you, that probably felt good. And if you've been nice to someone else, that probably felt good. That's pretty obvious. So then why does it make sense to turn that into a rule or something that you're going to do because it's good or it's better for you, it's going to be better for other people? Because there's plenty of things that have been done in human history, even still right now happening today, that are for other people's good, but are actually extremely harmful, extremely to the detriment of everyone involved. I mean, to be political, Obamacare, shit like that. I could just go on with loads of governmental examples and political examples of things that are, it's for everyone's good. We're doing it because we're nice. We're doing it because we're compassionate. But actually, it's like harming everyone. It's like kind of doing the opposite. But because we live in this world where we're all preconditioned to not question the martyr, to default to the victim martyr role, to try to be that for our country, for our religion, for ourselves, for everyone around us, when in reality we are just harming ourselves most of the time. We are sacrificing ourselves for nothing, because largely the people that we're doing it for don't even notice, they don't even care. And if they do notice and they do care, they're maybe just doing it for their own benefit. Because if they really respected us and loved us, they would say, hey, like, don't do that for you. I don't need you to do that, because I can see that that is harming you, that that is at your detriment. So I don't really need you to do that. Now, obviously, if we are parents or we're in situations where people are dependent on us, or we're in certain situations, and that's a completely different story. Because what I'm talking about is not a religion, it's not a hard rule. It's actually like something that's based more on intelligence and common sense and awareness and responsiveness. At which point it could be useful for us to check in with ourselves and consider and reflect upon the instances at which we are trying to make ourselves a martyr, trying to make ourselves a victim, and how just quickly those patterns will fire off in our reflexes. And this is our relationships and many areas in our life. And what will seem counterintuitive at first is that both of these character scripts are largely fucking arrogant and stupid. And I'll explain that quite literally. But first, it's kind of funny to me that one of the criticisms that's lofted at me a lot of times is that I'm arrogant, or I'm, opinionated or critical or mean or cold or all these things, which might be true. As it takes a certain degree of arrogance to believe that your thoughts are valid enough to invest so many years of your life making so many thousands and thousands of whatever pieces of content. But before we go down that road, what is really arrogant, I think, is not questioning these things, is not being aware of these things, is not actually investigating and having any real basis for things. To me, that's arrogant and that's silly. So anyways, getting back to the point, what I'm saying is how being a martyr or a victim is arrogant is that we think the world is kind of that dumb, and we think we're somehow that special, that it's like it's our duty to somehow, we have to like save and fix and do all these things. When the reality of the situation is, the world does not give a fuck. I mean, it sounds kind of like crass or mean to say, but the world doesn't care. Most people don't care. And if they do, it's usually only going to be for a very short period of time, and it's probably only going to be for their own benefit. So it really has nothing to do with you, because usually what you say is going to be taken in some other direction that maybe you didn't even imply or mean or even say. So it really has nothing to do with us most of the time. And if this feels like, if it hurts, if it stings, it's just indicating this martyr kind of worldview, that somehow God created this universe, and He's intervening, and He's making some people more important than others. And really that's what we're saying when we're thinking that we're special enough to be some kind of martyr or some kind of professional victim. That somehow like we're above other people enough to be this thing, which is pretty arrogant to say, honestly, if we consider just the basic scale of life on the planet, the basic scale of human history, pretty minimal. And this is really only revealing the fact that our worldview is based on, productivity and commerce, whereas our life is only meaningful if we can produce something, if we can do something. And that's basically just capitalism, really. And then we have its other, heavenly ideals of socialism and communism. But that's, again, just coming out of religion. So even though we think oh, we live in this modern world. The paradigms that are running the world aren't modern. Most of the time, they're rooted in religion from a very long time ago, in cosmologies and paradigms of a very, very long time ago. Now, obviously, there are exceptions: quantum computing, quantum dynamics, loads of other things that have happened in modern times. But this isn't in the world. This isn't how the world works and functions. You go to school. They're not teaching it in schools yet. Really, people's operating systems mentally have not yet caught up, because no one. It's just really confusing, and it gets really complex. And if you're going to structure and order a society, basically it's done in a very infantile way to keep it very black and white and generic and whatever. But anyways, it's another tangent. So getting back to our point, getting us in touch with this martyr sort of victim mentality. And I can guarantee a lot of us will have this image or idea of ourselves, whether something happened in the past and we're like, oh, it was so horrible, and this person did this to me, and life did this to me, and I'm just a victim, and da-da-da, which, yes, might be true. Maybe you were a child, and maybe there was a fucked up person or a group of people or who knows what that did something to you that you had no control over. That's true. I mean, if you're an American male born if you're a male born in America, basically, without question, your genitals will be mutilated by people you don't know. And that's a pretty big choice, which is going to influence your entire life. And you're not included within that. And that's the majority of people. And this is based on what? This is not based on science, because there is no science to back it up. This is based on what? Religion? Yeah. And then, let's see, this whole hoopla that was like gay marriage in America. Oh, there's a lot of science to back that up. Oh, wait, there isn't. There's none. Oh, wait, it's religion. Shit. Oh, drug prohibition. Oh, there's definitely a lot of science for that. Well, not really. Mostly it's just religion and profit and government. Because the drug war is a complete, utter, and abysmal failure. There are more drugs now than there were before. It's like, what? It's a complete hilarious. So we can keep going with examples, but I'm just illustrating that these are all widespread things that affect all of us, at least, if we live in this country. And those are things we didn't have single choice over. But that's it. And that's not even considering, your family dynamics and other things. But the point is that that's something that affects us, and that's in our psyche. Likewise, the whole martyr thing is coming from, religion. And it's really an easy way to understand it is when you're a kid, you want to be like you want to be an adult. You can't wait to be an adult. And the people around you that are bigger and are doing things like you look up to, you want to be like them. That's the way you show, respect, or you show whatever the word is. You show that you like someone or you want to be like them, basically. It's a compliment as a child. So the highest of the high would be Jesus, right? Because, he's all the way up here at the top of the pyramid, above your teachers, above your elders, above your siblings, above your older classmates, above all the religious people, above the president, above the whole pyramid, way up there, there's Jesus. He's right under God, but God is he's something we can't even just fathom or relate to. But Jesus was his only son somehow because, whatever, I'm not going to say anything too profane. So we want to be like him, and that's just something that we fixate on largely as a child. So then, of course, it's going to show up a lot of times in our life as an adult. And even if we're not consciously doing that, even if we grew up in a secular household, it's in all the media that we consume. It's in the marketing that we consume. It's in the movies. It's in the music. It's in love songs and all the shit about, oh, I'm here for you. I'm all about you, and I'm giving myself over to you, and I'm just like basically the attitude of subservience, of sublimation, of always being lower than, always doing these kind of things, are just drilled into us. Which, the last thing I'll say is that basically in no way, shape, or form am I talking about some kind of other end of the spectrum, meaning, oh, well, I was the victim and now or the martyr, but now I need to be like on the top, and I need everyone to like do all this shit for me, and I have to be like, just selfish and self-centered and fuck everyone over and go to this other extreme. That's not what I'm talking about at all, because that's just as stupid and just as arrogant, and it's actually no different. What I'm talking about is somehow relaxing that whole dichotomy, because those two things go together. Like, you don't overemphasize yourself without this other victim martyr kind of mentality. They go together, they're the same. There's really no difference. So it's basically just realizing that the more you, I guess the healthier you actually are in terms of having boundaries by actually investigating who and what you are, then that allows you to be more flexible. That allows you to attract relationships that are more appropriate. It allows you opportunities and situations to express yourself more. And really starting to get in touch with the implications and the principles behind these kinds of things. Like, for example, most of the things that you think are you, or the things that you like, have nothing to do with you. For example, I really like this tea. I really like all these teas and all these herbs on this table. But the reality is they're not me. I mean, I didn't grow them, I didn't produce them, I didn't do really anything. I just had the money and I bought them and I drink them. But even then, they're not really me, because they go through me and they have an impact and a shift on my physiology or my beingness, and then they're in the toilet. And this tea, or the water that makes up the tea, was probably at some point some other organism's pee, or it was like a cloud, and then it was rain, and then it was dew, and then it was so many other things. And even the metal that is this container, who knows what it could have been. Maybe it's made from recycled cars, or recycled buildings, or recycled roofing, or maybe it's just not recycled at all, but it just was some mineral that was found in the earth that was created through some process, which has nothing to do with me. And we think, oh, I really like this person. Well, the other person's not you. It has nothing to do with you. They have their own organism. And then we think, oh, well, I'm a really creative person. That's what makes me me. And I'm a creative person. Well, you're creative with words that you didn't, none of the thing you invented. You're creative with everything that you inherited. None of your thoughts are necessarily new or unique. All the tools you're using, the mediums you're using, those are all something that someone else put together a long time ago, probably. So how's that really me? Okay, well, okay, it's not that, then it's a feeling, this creative feeling that I get. Well, that feeling, if you want to use like reductionist science, well, that's just like that's just chemicals. Maybe you just got a rush of serotonin, rush of dopamine. Maybe if you just ate a bunch of chocolate, then you'd get that same sensation. Maybe if you had sex with another person that you cared for, you get a similar sensation. Maybe if you took an antidepressant drug, you would not have those sensations. So are you that sensation? I don't know. Or is that something else altogether entirely? And we could really just keep going with that conversation, but it's just getting you started to really maybe just consider things a bit more. Or not. I don't really care. Anyways, hopefully this video has been helpful to explore the concept of martyrdom and how it shows up. But really the main thing I'd take away is just to get you to reflect on it, to see it in your own psyche and or things around you in the world, so that you might actually be more intelligent and more aware and more engaged as a human being, which might be good for your health. Maybe not. I don't know. But either way, I did this video for you. I put together all this stuff for you, so you owe me. Just kidding. Right. Anyways, thanks for watching this video, and I'll talk to you soon.